Hello and welcome to the 6th video of the Risk Blueprint. Today, we will talk about one of my favorite topics in risk management, believe it or not, incident data collection. So, content in 3 points, like always, causes for reporting resistance, then important rules and choices of design when you structure your incident reporting, and finally, the difference between the reporting and analysis of different types of incident sizes. So first, why people might resist reporting operation risk. It's not always the fear of blame or the so-called blame culture, like many say. In my experience, the first hurdle is simply not knowing what to report. So don't assume when you try to build your risk culture about operational risk management and enterprise risk management, or when you try to encourage your staff to report, don't assume that they're going to try to hide the information from you. Usually they just don't know what are the criteria for reporting operational risk. So training and guidance and concrete guidelines is the first step. The second is, even though they want to report, they know what to report, they can't really bother because the process is cumbersome or they don't find any value for them in what to report. So the consequences of this second hurdle is to make the process as simple as possible and also to create value for the business in the incident reporting. I'll come to that. And finally, you have the so-called fear of blame or the extra workload, not the extra workload in reporting as my step 2, but the extra workload that will be brought upon them as a consequence of highlighting some weaknesses. First of all, in terms of making the incidents easy to report, try to be economical in the information you collect. The last video was dedicated to the rules of reporting and governance. And in the golden rules of reporting, I've highlighted the rules of having the value of information that exceeds the cost of collection. Meaning that as a rule of incident reporting, you want to collect the minimum meaningful information for you. So don't have too many fields. Here you have a table that you can read at your leisure once you have the possibility to download the slides. You have the minimum fields and the sufficient as well field that can be used to report incidents. Also use drop-down menus. I would refer you to the videos dedicated to the taxonomy, but you want structured categories of causes, controls, incidents, and impact so that people don't have to write their own stories when they report incidents, but just use structured, formatted drop-down menus. You can only have, or you may only have, one alphanumeric field for free comments. The rest can be structured, and that makes reporting more comparable, more prone to analysis, and much faster to report. A general context of that is before you launch a campaign on convincing your staff to report incidents, think long enough on the decisions of these guidelines and what are your design choices. Design choices on 3 elements really again. What types of incidents do you want to report? Do you report only the losses, which is mandatory by the banking regulators or the financial services regulation? Do you include near misses, which is good practice? So as a reminder, near misses are incidents that were avoided by pure luck, and that highlights gaps in controls, even though they didn't have an adverse materialization. Reporting on near misses, if you remember the criteria of maturity, is really the feature of very well mature and good risk culture firms. Do you report accidental gains? These are typically slid under the carpet. Is typically in market transactions, you have a directional trade. That is errors when you buy instead of selling or vice versa. The market moves your way accidentally and you make an unexpected gains. These are typically quite underreported, but needed to be reported. Or do you include other alerts of some sorts, like other features of logs or control weaknesses? Of course, the more expanded the reporting, the more mature your firms need to be in order for this reporting to be comprehensive. Very important decision, the reporting process. Do you centralize it? The best practice I've seen, or the ones I favor, let's say, it's a reporting that is centralized into the risk function. I know I have in mind a particular Nordic retail, very large bank, who at the time I was working with them, had a team of 5 dedicated to the collection and the recording of incidents reporting throughout the bank. So the process is super simple with the business, is in any case of alerts, any case of incidents, you call or you email the risk team, and it's the risk team that fills in the reporting. It's not the most common practice, though. The most common practice is that incident reporting lies in the business, either by everybody or in the hands of risk champion. Another practice that is good to have additionally, and I'll have a bit more detail on that coming up, is the collection from different information sources. So IT logs fields the operational risk incidents, the reconciliation breaks, the issue logs in different departments, which has the benefit of having a very low marginal cost in the incident reporting, because you collect other sources of information already existing when it comes to operational risk incidents. And finally, and I would say almost sadly, the most common practice is a standalone risk reporting, either in Microsoft Excel or in more and more commonly in a risk software, whatever it is. The problem or the challenge, let's say, of this is that you might end up with a standalone database that you will then need to include somehow in your management information. And then on the third type of decisions is the monetary value or the non-financial impact. So do you report only the financial cost, the net financial cost of your incidents, or do you record as well, which is a common practice, the so-called non-financial impact, reputation damage, customer continuity, etc.? Do you look at potential or actual impacts? And on all these types of impacts, do you use thresholds of reporting? So at what point do you judge an incident to be material enough to be reported to the risk function? And this is also a reflection of your risk appetite. So just to hear a bit more detail about one of the decisions I mentioned, which is to use a collection of incidents coming from existing sources. You can, as the example here, use the general ledger, the reconciliation breaks, the legal provisions, of course, which is a good proxy for the losses coming from lawsuits, customer complaints, etc., etc. I let you read some potential sources. Now, this can be your primary feed for incidents reporting, or this can be, and it's very useful when you are regulated in Europe or in the UK, for instance, to demonstrate to your regulator that your operational incident database is comprehensive. Because in those areas, in the US as well, one of the first questions the regulator will ask you if you're a regulated financial company is, how do you know that you have a comprehensive view of incident reporting? And if you don't only rely on the goodwill of your risk champions or your risk manager to collect incidents, but you do have an integration with other data feeds of the organization, you'll be a lot more credible to your regulator, which can be super useful, as you can imagine. The second hurdle, if you remember, besides having an easy process, is also to demonstrate value to the business. And a way to demonstrate value for the business of reporting their incidents is to feeding back their information, to bring them back the report of their own analysis, but also the status of incident reporting and analysis in other department. If you don't do that, the parallel would be, and that comes from one of my friends who works in the industry for decades, she says, asking the business to report centrally without feeding back the results of these reports is like asking people to type on a keyboard without a screen. Of course, you will have typos, and of course, people will be discouraged to type. And I thought this analogy was excellent, and I've used it ever since. So you, as a risk function, as a centralized risk manager, when you demand reports for the business, make sure you feed back this information. Also for quality controls, because there can be typos, there can be an involuntary error in the reporting, and by checking their own data, the department will be able to clean this information. And so this is a very simple example of a table that you can use and that I have used in many instances for the business. Very simple, which are the number of incidents per quarter, the amount. Don't use the average, and I'll come to that. Use the median. An important measure as well is the loss income ratio. The loss income is how much operational loss do you have compared to your operating income. And this is particularly important in banking when commercial bankers are used to the loan loss ratio in credit. So how much losses do you have, credit losses do you have compared to your outstanding portfolio? The loss income ratio in operational risk gives you a benchmark. Do you lose 2% of your operating income due to operational losses, 1%, 3% more? My personal benchmark is 2%. This number goes down when there's more automation of the business, just to give you an idea. And then you have a separate tally or a separate comments for the top risks. And that leads me to the third part of this presentation, dedicated to the different reporting and the different treatment and analysis of two different types of operational risk. Operational risk is a very dichotomic, very biased type of distribution, in a sense that you have a lot of small incidents, and then once in a while you have a big gap, you have a big event. And so you have, let's say, the mass losses and the max losses. And the mass losses, these lots of little things. So the small frequent losses, that you can use averages, you can, bundle them, but once in a while, make sure that there's no patterns in it. Make sure that this mass of small losses do not reveal a breach in controls. So once in a while, you need intelligence analysis, and now we can even use, definitely, I would advise you to use artificial intelligence analysis, which is very good at detecting patterns. So to analyze where are the repeated failures that might signal a structural problem, a leaking tap in your organization. And if there's not such pattern, you can also see these recurrent losses, just like shoplifting or little incidents or, minor theft in the hospitality industry, for instance, as a cost in the business that you need to include in pricing. And then at the other end of the spectrum, you have these large losses that need to be obviously reported immediately, and usually they are because they're too big to hide. But that needs to lead to root cause analysis, deep lessons learned, action plans, follow-up of action plans, which is also very part of the reporting, and I'll refer you to the reporting videos. I'll spend a bit more time on the root cause analysis of large events in the video for bow tie. And so just to finish visually on how to treat these incidents, so on the left-hand side here of the slides, you see a typical distribution of operation risk, where you have also the EL versus UL, the expected loss versus unexpected loss. That is also the vocabulary that is commonplace for credit risk manager and market risk manager. You can average the mass part of the distribution, these expected loss, but your tail risk, you want a specific analysis for. And finally, who needs to report? Well, the responsibility of alerting on the incidents clearly lie in the first line. It would be, depending on the organization, the responsibility for everyone to log their incidents, or dedicated to risk champion, or like in the centralized process, I mentioned, just alert the risk management, and risk management will do the recording. The incident analysis, the reflection of the action plan. So what are the lessons learned? How do we need to change, if any, of the controls in place, also lies in the first line of the organization. And again, I refer you to the risk governance videos for more detail. But the second line has very much a supporting role and guidance with the business, or to the business in this case. But more importantly, the second line, when it comes to incident collection and reporting, is to have this aggregated view, to report this contextualized information of incidents to senior management, but also to feedback these reporting tally and comparative tables to the business. And finally, as always, the third line have a role of independent assurance and oversight. Do you want to know more about our Risk Blueprint video series? Check out the other videos on our website.